Hello, everybody. My name is Linda Cundy, and I am here today with two of my colleagues to tell you about an event that is being put on by Brighton Therapy Partnership in November. The event is called Breaks in Therapy, Dynamics, Losses, and Developmental Opportunities. And the three of us will be taking part. You'll hear in a minute from my colleagues, Charles Brown and Joy Schaverien. The day is intended for counsellors and psychotherapists to reflect on how breaks, whether that is just the natural gaps between sessions or unplanned breaks, such as illness, bereavement and so on the part of the therapist, or planned breaks like holidays, sabbaticals, and perhaps pregnancy, the therapist's pregnancy, how these impact on the client and the therapist and the meaning that they might have, these gaps may have for the client. So let me first just tell you very briefly about my own presentation on the day, which is called The Spaces in Between, from Separation Anxiety to Security. I'm an attachment-based psychotherapist, and so I use the language of separation and attachment security. So I'm going to be talking about therapy and the rhythms and structure that regular sessions have for clients, and the usefulness of that in structuring people's, not only their external lives and their weeks, but their internal lives. And of course, nowadays, so often there are clients who are perhaps traveling the world or for some other reason are not able to commit to regular therapy, and we may have some thought about the impact of irregular or ad hoc sessions. As I said, we will be talking about both planned breaks and how clients respond to that, but also when there's a need for unplanned breaks and the dilemma then for the therapist with a responsibility for their clients, but also perhaps their own needs, their self-care needs, or their responsibilities to other people. And this reminds me very much of the idea of therapy as the impossible profession. I will be talking about different patterns of attachment in terms of clients' responses to breaks, and also different developmental stages within the therapy. That early on people may not appear to be so attached. Perhaps later they can manage the breaks a little better, and then further on still, and breaks may start to have yet another meaning. So I will suggest that people's responses to breaks tell us a lot about their attachment history, the way they seek attachment, and their defenses, their self-protective mechanisms, and then thinking really about how we can take all of this into account when working with our clients. So that is my talk on the day. And I'm going to hand you now to my colleague, Charles Brown, who will tell you what his talk is going to be about.
Hello, thank you, Linda. My presentation explores some of the challenges comparing screen mediated practice to traditional in-person therapy with regard to the experience of breaks. I'll be referring to Freud's seminal paper, Mourning and Melancholia, and we'll consider macro breaks, that is gaps between sessions, holidays due to illness, etc., and micro disruptions and disconnects in online therapy. I'll be also referring to Winnicott's potentiality of space, and exploring the more profound and conscious ways in which our clients and ourselves as therapists respond to the experience of breaks, and how loss and disturbances in the therapy can integrate ways of relating to the forefront of therapy. It seems that breaks and endings are likely to provoke moments of crisis in therapy, and they contain within them the possibility for profound understanding and fundamental change. So that's what we're going to be exploring in my presentation. Thank you. Maybe I could add something there. I don't know if I've messed it up now, Linda.
Carry on, Charles.
Some of the learning outcomes objectives would be to gain some understanding of the impact of technology on the therapeutic relationship, and so that we can consider how and in what new ways perhaps we can provide a psychic space for thinking and working in. And what use we can make of the can be made of the opening up of the space potentially. Thank you. I'll pass you back to Linda.
Thank you, Charles. And of course, nowadays online screen mediated work on the one hand allows opportunities to stay connected during breaks, including of course the lockdowns we've all lived through. But should either client or therapist need to travel, for instance, on the other hand, perhaps, yes, there's something about embodiment and disembodiment and the kind of reactions and connections that can get made there. So I'm looking forward to hearing your presentation on the day. Let me now hand you to Joy Schaverien, to tell you about her presentation.
Well, thank you, Linda, and thank you, Charles. So I'm going to focus on people who've attended boarding school when they were very young. And I'm doing that, but I've also got an eye to the fact that this is the sort of thing that happens to people who've been to boarding school, but actually other types of trauma as well, and losses, early losses. But the focus for me is on boarding school to begin with, but I hope our discussion can widen out. So the thing about children in boarding school is that they suffer multiple losses at a very young age, and the younger they go, the more traumatic it is in some ways, although even for older children, it's pretty traumatic too. So there is what I call the ABCD of boarding school syndrome, and that is the abandonment. The child is abandoned by their parents when they're left in a boarding school. They are bereaved, that's the B. And C, they're also captive. They live as captive people throughout their lives. And we can discuss this in more detail, I hope. The result of these multiple traumas is that the person has to learn to disassociate. So the child cuts off from their feelings at a very young age. And this is something that I think we're very well aware of with many types of trauma, that people disassociate. But the effect of this in therapy is that quite often people who've been to boarding school are apparently impervious to breaks in therapy. They may, you might tell them you're going to be away and, I'll be fine. And they will be. The problem is they will be fine. And it's only later on, when we've been working together for quite a long time and we've had quite a lot of breaks, that we can then point out that actually it does matter. And that instant reaction that it'll be fine is actually covering up the tremendous hurt behind it. That actually, yes, you've suffered multiple losses, but this is a loss here and now, and that actually the therapist does mean something, and the breaks in therapy actually have meaning. So I'm going to explore this in I shall talk about boarding school, but I hope we can widen it to discussion of people who've been abused in other ways, and people we work with who suffer in this way, and the way in which we can be alert to this and try to help people to catch themselves really and allow themselves to feel the hurt of the losses when there is a break in therapy for whatever reason, whether, as we've talked about, you know, whether it's illness in the therapist or just an ordinary break or a weekend, as Charles was mentioning. So that's basically the theme.
Thank you, Joy. Thank you. I'm just sensing what a huge therapeutic achievement it is when such a client is able to feel a sense of loss at an impending break. And what a potential crisis it could then be if that break is unplanned. So I think the three of us together, you know, will complement each other very well. And I also very much look forward to the part of the day when we can be in conversation and also invite in participants to raise questions, to point out, you know, areas that we may not have covered, and we can really engage with everybody. So I'm very much looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to working with these two wonderful people. And we would love you to come along. It's going to be on Friday, the 10th of November this year, 2023. Tickets available either through Brighton Therapy Partnership website or Eventbrite. And the recording will be made available for catch-up later if you've purchased a ticket. So enjoy the rest of your days. Thank you, everybody.